Hi everyone, welcome. I'm Annabelle from BioBuzz. I'm super happy to have you guys all here today for another one of our Career Catalyst sessions as part of our series designed to connect you with real-world insights from industry experts. And today I'm thrilled to have Sneha Saggurthi, a GXP expert whose career spans aseptic manufacturing, quality systems, training program development, and external vendor oversight, all within high-growth cell and gene therapy environments. Sneha currently serves as an adjunct instructor at Frederick Community College and plays an active role in Women in Bio in the Capital Region chapter as vice chair of the Young Women in Bio Committee. So she's very involved in helping to shape the next generation of talent in our field. In today's session, this is going to be a great way to explore a move into QA or training. So we're going to be chatting about kind of the key skills for success in regulated environments, career paths in QA and GXP training, and how learning principles improve manufacturing outcomes. But before I hand it over to Sneha, I do want to kind of quickly talk about our sponsor and give a special thanks to them. So thank you for Biotech today for sponsoring the session. They've trained many different scientists, have many different great workshops. So if you're looking to upskill, great resource. So definitely check them out at biotrack.com. I also want to mention that today's session is part of the BioBuzz Talent Lab. So if you're not on there already, great opportunity, great hub for career growth and community. So highly encourage you to go on there, join the beta testing of that, and you'll be able to access more resources like this. All right, so let's get started. I'm going to hand it over to Sneha.
All right, so as Annabelle said, my name is Sneha. I'm currently a quality compliance manager at a company called Cartesian Therapeutics. So we're a cell therapy company. We're a little untraditional. Instead of using DNA, we actually use mRNA to work with our cell therapies. So definitely look into that as well. But I'll get started with a little quick snapshot of me and my background. I'm also a very, very informal presenter trainer. So if you do have questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. Let me know. We can always answer them, or feel free to just interrupt me. I'm not going to get mad. But so with education-wise, I actually went to UMBC. So I was very much raised in Maryland. I did a dual degree program. So I did my BA in biology. I did my BS in psychology because I was originally on the pre-med track, which I think is the story for a lot of people in biotech. And now we're all here. But we actually ended up having a very untraditional career path, which I'll talk about a little bit. But during my time there, I was on a neuroscience track, hence the psychology part. I will say the psychology part has helped me way more in this industry than the biology part ever had. And I think it's really important to kind of know people and be able to cater to that. So again, right now I am a quality compliance manager at Cartesian Therapeutics. I started at Cartesian in July 24, so I'm reaching my 1 year very soon. We are a very quickly growing company, so I would say 70% of the employees there have been there less than a year, so rapid growth. We're going into phase 3. What my role in QA is responsible for is all of the GXP training. So we're kind of nice where we have everything in-house. We don't really use CMOs at the moment, so we have GMP, GCP, and GLP all in-house. So we do cater to all 3 of those regulations and departments. I also do supplier quality, so I get to go audit our vendors, which has been very fun and interesting. I've gotten to travel a little bit now. I also do our internal audit program, and we do continuous improvement. So in terms of launching tier boards and stuff like that, we're still very baby GMP, so we're catching up. As Annabelle mentioned, recently this year, I did join the Women in Bio Capital Region Young Women in Bio Committee. So what Young Women in Bio does is all the way from elementary school to postdoc, especially young women trying to get into industry or bio, we really give opportunities, help advocate for. As someone who really was pre-med or die at one point, it was really important now going back to try to show, hey, there's different avenues you can do and still have a successful career without needing to be tunnel vision, because sometimes things don't work out the way we plan. I also do work with Empower Bio, which is a training company. We kind of come out and we also help support needs for different companies. And the big thing that I'm the most proud of is recently I became an adjunct instructor for Frederick Community College, but for their biotech boot camp. So what we do for their boot camp is we essentially have a 4-week high intensive program for people, and then we kind of funnel them into the biotech industry. So I know Annabelle BioBuzz just posted about the biotech bootcamp that's coming up. So we have our summer session. Definitely go check that out. We have an info session on June 4th if anyone's interested. And I will say the two certifications that have helped me a lot in this industry are having a Lean Six Sigma certification. So it starts with white belt, then yellow belt, green belt. If you can at least get your white belt, I think that's going to help a lot in terms of project management and things that you are going to need when you get into more of a leadership role. And recently I got my certified quality auditor from the American Society of Quality. So highly recommend looking into those two, and I'll kind of look into that. But I'll kind of talk a little bit about my background, because I'll be honest, when I was in college, I had no idea what biotech was, did not even know this was an industry. And I think a lot of people kind of felt that way until COVID hit. And that's really where it exposed, hey, we need vaccine production. Here's all the biotech companies. And there was this big boom. But for me, it was very much pre-med or bust. From the moment I was literally born, this man is not my grandpa. This is actually the doctor that delivered me. And at the point where he delivered me, he was like, gosh, she's going to be a doctor. And that's just my life from then on. So when we used to go visit India when I was a kid, they actually used to have me like scrub in and kind of go watch procedures because they were always grooming me for pre-med. And that's something that I always just knew is, okay, I'm going to be a doctor. It was kind of cool. UMBC has really good opportunities, but we have something called medical brigades where you can do a medical mission trip. So I went to Nicaragua for mine, and I did take permission from the family and everything to show this. But when I was in Nicaragua, most of my week was just at the clinic because I can speak Spanish. So they had me in triage for the entire week. I didn't really get to go on rotations or anything. So on the last day, they actually did let me shadow one of the doctors to go to a house visit. And I think this was kind of the point where I felt kind of, oh, I want to be pre-med, or like I actually want to help people. But we shadowed the doctor, and these were two of the patients that we had. So the lady in the middle, that was the mother. So we went there. She was like, there's something, we don't know what's wrong with my sons. We don't have the way to kind of bring them to a hospital, bring them to a clinic. And this was a triage clinic where people were walking for miles to come just to get physicals and antibiotics. So this is kind of shadowing this and seeing this was kind of my big turning point into, okay, whatever I do want to be able to give back and help people. Also, as just a slight disclaimer, I had COVID all last week, so my throat might sound a little scratchy. That's why. So kind of how I funneled into biotech. So I graduated from UMBC, again, was planning to go to med school, took my MCAT. And after I took my MCAT, I was applying to medical schools. And for some of you who don't know, if you apply to medical schools, you have to pay a fee for every application. And that fee is like $300 to $500 per application for some reason, which you don't get back if you don't get into the school. So during this period, my mother, this sweet woman over here, decided to break her foot because this was the perfect opportunity to do so. And she was kind of the breadwinner for the family. So because med school applications, we didn't want to have to resort to like drastic measures to get money to apply to med school. So we ended up Googling biology jobs, and I took a job at Catalent. It was really interesting because when I applied, again, had no idea what biotech was, but had the biology degree. I do think that helped me kind of get a foot in the door. But we will talk a little bit about why I don't think degrees are necessarily giving you a leg up in terms of working in the industry. I asked them, the interview shifted really quickly. When I was first there, they were asking me a lot of technical questions. But then I was like, oh, I would want to do night shift because my mom, again, my dad can stay with her during the night when I work, and then vice versa, I'll stay with her during the day. And as soon as I said that, the interview questions turned into, oh, do you have a pulse? Can you read and write? All right, you're hired. So definitely taking those jobs that a lot of people don't gear toward will definitely give you a heads up as well. So that's how I started in Catalent. My original idea was I was going to work, make money, and then keep applying to med school until I got in. But as you can kind of see from my career, I ended up falling in love with the biotech industry and ended up staying and growing in here. So in 2019, that is when I started as a manufacturing associate one on night shift at Catalent. So I got bundled into the upstream commercial manufacturing team. And then I rose next year into a MA2. And that's kind of where I decided. So, what I was doing at the Harmon site was commercial manufacturing. And the difference between commercial and clinical is commercial, you are going to do the exact same process over and over and over again, and you're usually assigned to one client. So, you do learn very quickly because you're exposed to that procedure over and over, but that's kind of all you're exposed to. So, what I wanted to do is really kind of expand and learn some more. So I asked to move to the Montgomery sites that Catalent had at that time, and they were doing clinical manufacturing. Now, when you're in clinical manufacturing, you're probably working for a bunch of different clients if you're at a CMO. So you're learning different equipment, different procedures, and that's kind of the sweet spot of where I wanted to be once I got my foundation on GMP. So moved to the Montgomery sites. I did have a small little detour in 21 where, and I will say I was younger and I was cocky, and I think I was just chasing title and money. And I'm kind of happy I learned this lesson a little bit earlier in my career, where they offered me, good amount of money, higher title. I hopped, but it probably wasn't the best fit for me. I'm not saying that it wasn't a good job because it was a great opportunity, but maybe my position in the team dynamic wasn't the best. And that's kind of when I called Catalent back and I was just like, hey, this is kind of how I'm feeling. And that's why I tell you, like, biggest tip is always leave on good terms because if something else doesn't work out, if you leave a good relationship, you can always go back. So called Catalan. I was like, hey, this is the situation. They're like, well, nobody is actually getting trained since you left because I was the qualified trainer. They're like, we'll open a training specialist position for you to come back. So I was like, okay. Went back to Catalan in 2022. And I think that's really where my career took off. But before we go into that and the training aspect, I will talk a little bit about manufacturing. Biggest takeaway from this and your little hopping is you have to find your fit. You have to prioritize yourself. If you're in a place where you're not learning or you don't feel happy there, you're not necessarily going to put your best foot forward or actually contribute to the company as much as you could as well. So definitely take that. Don't chase the money or title, chase where you feel like you can grow. But from my time in manufacturing, there are a few key takeaways. This is me back when I was in manufacturing. But I think manufacturing was really my foundation for what I wanted to do and led to every other aspect of my career. So number one is importance of a team. So when you're in GMP manufacturing, you are literally not allowed to work alone. You need a verifier, you need a team. And I was very lucky where I was blessed with very, very good teams. And we were like family, especially my team at Montgomery. We used to call each other like brother, uncle, grandpa. So it was a very good dynamic. And that's who kind of has your back. One thing I will say is in this industry, there is absolutely no way to grow alone. And you want to grow with your team. So that's something where it's very important to have a team that you get along with, have a good team that you can rely on as well. Manufacturing is a great foundation. So if you want to grow in the biotech industry, especially for a GMP company, I highly, highly recommend, and I tell all of my students these as well, you'd probably want to have a hands-on role. Even if it's just for a year, have a hands-on role, whether that's manufacturing or QC or something where you actually learn the basics, you learn the foundation, because all of the other departments such as QA, engineering, MS&T, they all revolve around operations and around manufacturing. So if you have that foundation, you kind of see where everything fits into place and comes together, and it will help you succeed in other roles. This is also where I learned the importance of resources and accommodation. So again, I was night shift, and the training team at that time, I think they were a little bit understaffed. So I would work, and we were on 12-hour shifts. So I would work 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. And then for training, and this is training that you need, I would have to drive to UMBC and take a training class at noon. And for me, that was a little rough coming off of 12-hour shifts. So I think being able to cater to your employees, if you're a leader, you have off shifts, right? Make sure that they are resourced appropriately. Make sure that they have warehouse if they need it. Make sure that you're catering to their shift as well. Because if you expect the quality of work to be the same on your off shifts, you need to give them the same quality of resources. And that's where it kind of comes in with skill-based training. Even though I did have my bio degree, I will tell you, I started in biotech and didn't know what at all I was doing. I didn't even know what a BSc was. So I really think skills-based training programs are very important. I'm a huge, huge advocate for industries to get away from the whole 4-year degree recommendation or requirement. And that's just because maybe someone didn't have the same opportunities as someone else, but it doesn't mean that you can't teach them or train them up with skill-based training. It's a little better in my opinion too, because you can train them exactly what they need to know. And usually they end up paying off a lot. So I think importance of character over degrees is definitely important. And I think mindset. So if you are planning on getting into a GMP environment whatsoever, you're coming into chaos, right? It's a little rough on these like old hard GMP streets, and things go wrong all the time. And I think a big aspect of how you grow in GMP in general, not just manufacturing, is when there is something that goes wrong. So let's say you don't have benzonase for the day, or you end up dropping your cells, or there's a contamination. A lot of people take that and they kind of set themselves on fire a little bit. But I think if you take it as an opportunity to grow, so if you're like, okay, my ACTA isn't working properly, how do I troubleshoot? And then you learn how to troubleshoot. Or, hey, my VCD isn't hitting and I don't know why. Okay, let me look into why the cells aren't growing. Let me look at the DO. Let me look at the pH. Different things like that. You always want to take a setback as an opportunity for something to learn from. And I think having that mindset's very important. The reason I say go into manufacturing, go into QC, go into a hands-on role first, even though it might not be ideal for what you want, is because, let's say, for example, quality assurance, right? There's different aspects of quality. Your quality team has to cater to all of these aspects. So there's manufacturing, QC, ClinOps, if you have an in-house validation. And these are kind of some of the roles that go into it. So if you're QA, quality systems and compliance, so this is majority of what I do now, you'll have to navigate electronic systems, right? So you want to be familiar with what a QMS is, where do I house deviations, how do I document these things, what a change control is. You want to look at regulatory assessments. A little bit of continuous improvement is good as well, especially if you're in a compliance role. Internal audits, right? What are the purpose of them? How do I handle them? But you'll kind of see that with all of these roles, they're not necessarily entry level, right? And I'll admit that if I came straight out of college and I got put into a role like this, I would not know what to do. And you can learn on the job. I'm not saying that that's not possible, but what's ideal is you have that foundation coming in so you know what you're looking for. So for example, I always tell people when I'm training, right? If you're a verifier for someone sealing something or welding something, you're not going to know what a bad seal or weld looks like to verify that unless you're trained on it yourself. So that's kind of the same thing with these support departments like QA. You kind of want to get that strong foundation of what you're looking for when you're looking to give oversight. I'll breeze through these. So client services, that's another option you can go into with QA if you're looking into getting into quality. You'll typically see these at CMOs and CDMOs. This is, again, like a project lead for client projects. This is something, again, I would suggest, you should get a PMP possibly, or some sort of project management thing to be able to work effectively in this role. You want to know change controls, deviations, audits, client specific. So even if you don't have that experience on the floor, try to get some certifications, try to get some courses or something in as well, because that will really give you a leg up. There's also QA training. So that's your learning management system, your curriculum development, training a trainer. This is, again, something you want to have adult learning principles, knowledge for a background of. If you are in charge of OJTs, if you are training on a bioreactor, you need to know the bioreactor. So again, there's something where highly, highly recommend a good stint in hands-on before you get into it. Even with validation, it's a lot of document reading, but it's again, you need to know what you're looking for in documents, right? What is a pass? What is a VMP? What is IOPQ? What is EMPQ? Different things like that as well. And this is where QA ops, I will always recommend people who have been in ops to be in QA ops. So with manufacturing, we'll talk about that. It looks like it's a little bullet point, but I have an example of what that really entails. And then QC support, right? So if you're QA ops, or you're supporting manufacturing, you're looking at batch record review, you're looking at area release, you're monitoring on the floor. If you don't really know the process, or if you don't know what you're looking for on the floor, have a good foundation of GMP, you don't know what you're contributing to with that oversight. So I do think it's very important, again, to consider having that foundation. Same thing with QC, right? I, even to this day, cannot tell you what a test method qualification would look like starting from scratch to now, or stability studies, because I've never supported QC. So something like that, again, best people for those are going to come from people who are in those roles already, which is a great path. So if you are in manufacturing, if you're in QC, you can kind of speak to it. It's a great way to kind of get your foot into quality and going into other support departments as well. So QA ops looks like the smallest bullet point on here, but this is an example from one of my past jobs, actually, of the roles and responsibilities of QA on the floor. So be prepared for 80% coverage on the floor. Critical manufacturing overviews, right? You need to provide support for thaw, cell expansion, transfection, harvest, fill finish. You have to monitor personnel behavior, so gowning, aseptic techniques, and be comfortable like removing people if they're not compliant. So again, something like even 1 year in manufacturing or QC or engineering validation will give you a huge leg up if you are looking to get into quality assurance. All right, so speaking of leg up, I do feel like being in manufacturing gave me a huge leg up when it came to training. So when it comes to training, I was on the floor, I learned the equipment, I was a qualified trainer, and now as a training specialist, I do feel like this gave me a huge, huge advantage when I went back into a training role. Because as somebody on the floor and I having that perspective, it's kind of like, okay, well, I know what you need as an operator. So I think that was really what helped me a lot. But there are a few takeaways I took from training. So again, I think this is where my career really took off. And I'll kind of say why. I'll go through this briefly because I know we have time limits. But I know that this is absolutely how nobody looks at training. So training is one of those support departments where you don't see a lot of like value at first glance. So at a first impression, there's a little return on investment, right? We're not the money makers. We're not the people on the floor making the product that's selling for 1.2 million a dose. A lot of people see training as time just taken away from the floor, or it's really only necessary for checking the box training requirement. But then you start seeing misunderstandings and mistakes or variation between different departments and shifts, deviations, safety incidents, and effective CAPAs. And then people start looking at training like this a little bit. So when you are building a strong GXP training program, if you want to say it's really that important or someone challenges that, my favorite example to use is something that all of us still get stumped over in this industry, and that's acronyms. So for example, EBITDA. When I saw this, I didn't know what this was. For me, this kind of just looked like some sort of fish, but earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. This one, a lot of people, if you are on the younger generation, if you're on social media, you know this means if you know, you know. And this is something that's very different from meeting to meeting. So or company to company. So I've seen stand-up meeting, I've seen single-use material, single-use mixer, so all of these things. And this is why training at each company is very important, is because we all use different things, we all use different language. And I'm sure when you guys first started in the industry, you heard people say stuff like HEK cells or the BSE, for example. And in your head, you're just like, I don't know what the heck that is. But that's something where you want to cater to those people coming in, right, to be able to actually learn. So there are different stages of training. There's onboarding, there's technical training, and there's upskill and development training. But when it comes to all training, I really highly recommend having a tailored training approach. This is something I'm still learning today. So a prime example is at my current company, we do onboarding training and we do safety training. And I used to put everybody through the same safety training. So it would be like an hour and we talk about like bloodborne pathogen and we talk about lab safety and stuff in there as well. And then you started having people in finance being like, this is scary. I don't want to learn about, all these things that could go wrong in a lab. Um, and it was kind of like a little bit of a waste of time for them too, right? So that's where you kind of want to have a tailored training approach when you want to have a lean method when coming to it. So kind of look at, what really does finance need from this? What are they taking away from for their job role? What will manufacturing need versus batch disposition, HR? And that's where you want to have your tailored training, but also a tailored curricula. And I'm sure at some point all of us have gone like to a company and had like 300 SOPs assigned to you at one time. And that's a little scary. So I highly recommend, again, bucketing your curricula, right? So assigning it versus your learning management system. You do want to have due dates to motivate completion. So align them to your 30, 60, 90, but have those curricula buckets. So this is your 30 days. This is what you need to focus on first. This is your 60. These are your 90. And that kind of also helps get you into a lean approach. So making sure trainees only really get the training they need for their job role. So again, 30, 60, 90-day plans, if you guys aren't familiar with it, there's onboarding, and then there's usually in the first 30 days, you're going to train on basic equipment or basic access. 60 days are going to be intermediate. So maybe that's your cell counters, or maybe that's your metabolite readers, stuff like that, and then getting access to those machines. And then 90 days would be your like actives, your bioreactors. You can even go up to 120 days. But you want to stagger it so it kind of builds on each other. You don't want to put someone on the floor like I was and just throw them into the BSC. And that all goes into the right training at the right time. So, how we know what the right training is, and this is going to be true for whatever you do as a support role, whether you are QA, whether you are project management, whether you are training, you want to do something called a voice of customer. So a voice of customer is basically you talking to your customers or your end stakeholders. It involves collecting, analyzing your customer feedback, and the goal is really to understand your customer needs, expectations, preferences, and you want to use that to kind of improve your customer experience. So a lot of people, and I used to do this too, I used to just go into places and be like, this is what you need, this is the requirement, this is like the best thing for your people. And your operator, manufacturing leaders would look at you like, oh, you want me to take my people off the floor for 2 days for that? And that's where your stakeholders are going to have priorities, are going to have resources. So working with them is always going to be better than working like for them or having them work for you. For example, with training, some questions you would want to ask are, what are your impressions of the current training process? What skills are lacking in your new hires? How long should training last? How many days are you willing to give us? Kind of like asking them what their perspective is and what they prioritize, and then you want to tailor to that. Because again, as a support department, you can advise, but at the end of the day, your value really lies with your stakeholders. So you kind of want to have that approach to this as well. And that all goes into something that's ideal quality culture. So whether you're QA, whether you're training, whether you're doing supplier management, it's all about optimal balance. So there are unacceptables, right, that we want to stay away from. And we want to do a little bit more than the bare minimum requirements because we're CGMP, not just GMP. But you also don't want to be so honed in on perfection that you're in the way of progress. So you don't want to get to a point where you're unsupportable. So again, there are gold standard perfections out there, but maybe where your company or where your stakeholders are at are not where they can provide those resources. So you kind of want to meet them halfway. You want to say, we're not doing anything unsafe, right? Patient first, no one's getting hurt. There's safety, there's quality, there's compliance, but also with the optimum resource, time, and cost. And having this mindset going into any operational role or support role, especially QA, is going to be very important. I've met QA leaders who will be like, I'm shutting down production because of this. It's not perfect. And that's just something the business can't support, right? So you have to find a way where there is an optimal balance of quality, but it's also helping the business a little bit as well. All right, another big thing from training that I took was the power of mentorship. So I highly, highly advise you guys to reach out, make mentors, be mentors yourself, because this is what really kind of changed my projection. I always saw myself in operations. I don't know how I joined the dark side of QA, and now I'm over there. But it worked out well because of my mentors. So when I was in training, I had the senior director of operations kind of mentor me. His name was Jack. People were very, very afraid of Jack. He was definitely a force, but he was a force that I think I needed to learn from. So I was 23 when I joined GMP, or the industry, before my frontal lobe even developed, and I was very sensitive. So, someone would say something, I would cry, or something would rub me the wrong way. And Jack's really the one that taught me, like, you have to be tough. Like, you can't really do that. You have to go in there. You have to own it. I thought I had a lot of imposter syndrome at one time as well. So going in there and being like, no, you know what you're doing. Like, you're smart. Go in there. He gave me a lot of opportunities. He put me on this deviation reduction project that I absolutely did not want to be on. And he just called me one day. He was like, hey, I volunteered you for this. And I was upset at first, but that ended up being where I learned the most of my quality skills. So trust your mentors, even if it's something that you don't want to necessarily do, don't say no, because again, every opportunity is something to learn from. Cassie, I will always shout out. She was my boss when I was in training. She was the best boss ever. And I think it's very important to have bosses that you can relate to and kind of empathize with. So, and I know this is like a little taboo, but I told you I'd talk about messy parts as well. But when you're a young woman growing in the industry, especially rapidly, there's some pretty nasty things people tend to say about you because of that growth. And that's something that I struggled with a lot when I first got into training and I was rising quickly. And Cassie was the person who kind of helped me work through that. And that's because she went through the same thing. So she was also, very young going into her industry. She was reporting to the CEO at one point. So she dealt with it a lot, and her being able to relate to me and kind of say, this happened, this is how you deal with it. This is, kind of the aspect of how to navigate did help me a lot. So, she really did teach me there are people out there that aren't going to like you, right? People are going to throw dirt on you sometimes, but ultimately dirt helps you bloom. So you kind of want to take that. And then she gave me a lot of empowerment and trust. So she was actually completely remote, which is why Jack and Alan really did step in to kind of help mentor me. But when she was remote, she was like, do your thing. If you want to stay extra hours, go ahead. If you think this is what we need, go ahead. And I think that's what you need from a boss, is someone who's very hands off. If you're that type of person, just go for it. But if you need me, I'm here. And Alan was also one of my big three mentors. So he was actually the one who got me in continuous improvement. Again, if you guys are in the biotech industry at all, I highly, highly recommend going into continuous improvement. So get your white belt, get your yellow belt, or just look into LinkedIn Learning continuous improvement methods. It has helped me so much with these different tools that they give you, and kind of changing that mindset to, okay, what's absolutely necessary? Let's get rid of waste that you may not need. So Alan, I actually reached out to him on LinkedIn and was like, hey, I have no idea what continuous improvement is. Can you teach me? So he hopped on a call with me. He ended up joining Catalent shortly after that, actually. So it worked out, and he helped me become a CI site lead, got me into the training programs. And he's the one that taught me, and this is very CI minded, that you always come with data. And the biggest takeaway I can take from that is, again, GMP, things go wrong all the time. And a lot of people complain. If you keep going to your managers and it's just complaints, or you keep saying what's wrong, yes, they're going to listen to you at some point. However, you are going to get a lot more further if you go with a solution. So if you go there, if you tell them, hey, this is an issue, here's the data to support it, here's what we can do to fix it, is what I highly recommend you guys start to adopt, because that will set you apart a lot from other people and will also kind of help you grow. And other thing with Alan is he played devil's advocate a lot, which was so annoying, but it's kind of what you need as well. So challenge yourselves, challenge your perspectives. If you say, hey, this is what I think, be open to people challenging that and kind of learning from that as well. And take the leftovers. So one thing I will say is the way that I think I climbed the most is I took the jobs that nobody else wanted. So I took the night shift, especially because I was night shift. I knew like what it's like to not be serviced that way or to have to come in on extra shifts. So again, that really did lay the foundation. That picture of the shoes was Jack was like, hey, you need to clean out all the shoes in the locker room. And I did, because I will say one of the most harmful things you can say in this industry is, oh, that's not my job. And I think that's just because if you do show you're proactive and again, take everything as a lesson, like what can I learn from this? What can I reduce from this? Or what can I take away from this is going to be the most important mindset. So people will acknowledge it. So if you start going on those like leftovers, right? So night shift, or maybe the sites that aren't catered to as much, or the messy jobs people don't want, that is going to be what really drives you forward and kind of sets you apart as well. So again, in my current role, I am a quality compliance manager. So came from training into here. I actually started as a QA, as the training manager for QA. And I shortly joined quality compliance about 2 months ago. And that was all thanks to this guy. So this is my QA team on the left side at Cartesian. That's my boss down there with his painting. He did say if anyone was interested in purchasing his artwork, let him know. So there you go. But he was the one that straight up told me, and we fought about this so much, but he was like, you know, training has a cap, right? You can do more. Like, if you want to really get ahead in this industry, training is not going to take you to a C level. Training is not going to do this. And that's kind of what I think is important too, is having someone to be blunt with you and just kind of upfront and saying, well, this is what you should do instead a little bit. I never saw myself going into quality, never saw myself getting into compliance. He's the one who was kind of like, hey, you can do more. Let's get you into auditing. Let's get you your CQA, ASQ. You've been a part of audits. You've done this. And that's kind of where, again, trusting your mentors is a very important part. I'm kind of like very happy in my role now because I do feel like I'm back a part of a team. So my little QA team is there. It's only 8 of us. The top picture is my young woman in bio team. And the bottom one is our most recent cohort for the Frederick Community College that all graduated and they all have jobs now. So very proud of them. And I'll end with just a quick little interactive thing about the purpose of audits. So people hate audits. And I don't know why, because I love them. I love audit season. I love internal audits. I love going on audits. And basically, this is the whole purpose of them. So I'll have you guys watch this quick video.
This is an awareness test. How many passes does the team in white make? The answer is 13. But did you see the moonwalking bear?
Right. So a lot of people have seen that in like college classes and stuff like that. So I'm gonna have you do it one more time now that you know about the moonwalking bear.
The monkey business illusion. Count how many times the players wearing white pass the ball. The correct answer is 16 passes. Did you spot the gorilla? For people who haven't seen or heard about a video like this before, about half missed the gorilla. If you knew about the gorilla, you probably saw it. But did you notice the curtain changing color or the player on the black team leaving the game? Let's rewind and watch it again. Here comes the gorilla, and there goes a player, and the curtain is changing from red to gold.
Okay, so I'll stop it there. But that is why we do audits, is really to kind of
that's the
show.
But this
Oh my God. Technical difficulties. Can I leave? Okay. All right. So that's kind of why we do audits, is sometimes we're so ingrained in our own work that that's all we see. So having an external person or having a different person even from a different department coming through and kind of taking a look is going to always drive improvement. And that's why I always think audits are a great tool for identifying things you may not see and also making sure that you are in compliance with things you may not think about. So I'll rush through this. Sorry, Annabelle, I'm a yapper, so I know we're a little late. But non-traditional paths work. So again, I started as pre-med. I went into operations, always thought I wanted to be operations. Had no idea that I would join the op and join QA. But non-traditional paths work. So you don't have to follow one set career roadmap. Be open to other avenues. So if your mentor is telling you, hey, consider something like this, if you trust them, they know you, try it, right? And just because we're on different paths doesn't mean we can't end up in the same place. So just because you don't come from a 4-year degree or a PhD or something like that doesn't mean that you can't have a good quality of career in life here. And be proactive. So again, opportunities come when you raise your hand. How I got Alan as a mentor is I reached out to him on LinkedIn to tell me about continuous improvement. So raise your hand, especially for things no one else is raising them for. So take those leftovers, take the things nobody else wants to do. And relationships matter. So networking and mentorship really opened doors I didn't expect, even with everything. So when I was at Catalent, I reached out to Savita, who's the program director of FCC, because we wanted to donate some equipment. That's how I ended up getting the job as the adjunct instructor at FCC, because I met Savita. Savita then introduced me to Amrita, who's in charge of Empower Bio, and she's also one of the vice chairs for Women in Bio Capital Region. That's how Amrita was like, hey, come to Women in Bio. I think you'd be great in the leadership team. And that's how I became the vice chair for Young Women in Bio. I'm telling you, mentorship, leaving good relationships is a huge, huge gain in this industry. And you want to be a good person. So I've learned this a lot. People have thrown titles in my face for a long time. I don't treat anybody differently because of their title, but the main thing that people are going to remember you for is how you impacted them. So that's where I think just be a good person and have some empathy, right? Put the human back into humanity, especially when you do external quality, supplier quality. So many people treat some of these vendors like, oh, you work for me, I can kind of just do what I want. But they're your partners at the end of the day. So you want to, again, treat everybody equally. You want to put a little bit of empathy if someone's having a bad day, something like that, and admit your shortcomings. Honestly, once I left my previous place of work, I actually did reach out to a lot of people to say, like, I apologize if I rubbed you the wrong way. I was having a bad day, or, maybe we didn't have the best relationship, but I don't think we're in the healthiest environment. And that's actually helped a lot as well. So admit your shortcomings, go back and show that you are like human. And give back to your community, pay it forward. I will say, like, I've always been the type of person to always be like, okay, what's next? Like, okay, I got this, what's next? And I never really felt fulfilled in my career, no matter the money, the title, anything, the recognition, until I started giving back, until I got involved with FCC, or until I started training and like going on the shifts or actually helping people. And I think that's like the biggest takeaway for me is pay it forward. Because you wouldn't get to where you are unless somebody opened that door for you. So you want to always open it for other people. And don't wait to feel ready. Just kind of jump in and figure it out. That's one of the things I wish, if I could go back. I was always so scared to like sink that I never really swam. And now I'm starting to feel like my confidence, and I'm starting to jump into things more. So I think that's very important. And a consultant said this to me one time, and it's always stuck with me. But the only constant thing in life is change, and you want to embrace it. We're in an industry that's changing so rapidly. It's not the most secure sometimes. And any setback could always be a good redirection. I'll say anything I was always rejected from ended up down the line. I looked back and I was like, oh, there's a reason, but like God didn't want me to take that at that time. But you always constantly evolve. So you also want to evolve yourself. So look into certifications, continuous learning. There's not one person out there that knows everything about the industry. So you want to evolve as the industry is evolving as well. Look into ASQ quality certifications if you really are interested in getting into QA. So some of those exams, they're usually under like $500. A lot of them are open book with your textbook. You will have to study, but they have a lot of good ones. Look at LinkedIn Learning and Biotech as well, who's our sponsor, has really good programs. All right, we can switch to Q&A if you want. I do have my LinkedIn QR code here if anybody does want to connect. And if anyone's interested in women in bio, you can scan that as well.